So, Jesus as a child was like any other child, although he had a bit of a dreamy nature. He liked to play on his own and liked to be alone, and had a sense of the divinity, something he intuitively had. He had a soul that was born pure. Now, what does that mean? We're all born into the world as beautiful, pure souls, but as we enter into the world, we take on the conditions of the world. As a child, we absorb many different influences, especially from our parents. Jesus had a special blessing from God, and that is that he did not take on those conditions. He was pure. And this is what laid the foundation for later, for his ministry. Because when he experienced life as this pure soul, many of the faculties and capacities of the soul were already available to him, so that he could see things from that perspective of the divine. His soul was awakened already. And yet he did not really realize at an early age who he was or what he was meant to do. That came later. But his mother said that he was always attentive to his brothers and sisters. He helped his father in his workshop, and of course learned the trade of carpentry, and tried to live a pious life. He was always interested in the teachings of the Jewish faith and what their philosophies were at the time. And so he had this spiritual religious bent to him. But yet, in a way, all of that was not really the mission that he had or the understanding that came later. It was merely the predecessor of him understanding what he was meant to teach. So he did not know about his mission till quite a bit later in life. And he certainly didn't consider himself the Messiah, the King of the Jews. Though as he grew up, he had a lovely nature. He was actually quite a handsome-looking guy. When he was full grown, he was about over 6 feet tall, which was kind of unusual for that time. And I'm sure the ladies were quite interested in him, although he didn't seem to want to go that route. He felt he had another way to go in his life. And so he continued in his life up into his, I think, early 20s, until things really started to happen for him spiritually, opening up and understanding what he was meant to do in life.
Thank you. So in the Padgett messages, Jesus continued to say, I know it was said that my mother was told of the purpose of my birth and what a blessed woman she was. But this is not true. As she has told me, she had no reason to suppose that I was any different from other children. The story of the angel of God coming to her and telling her that she must submit to the birth of a child who would be begotten by God or by his Holy Spirit, and that she is a virgin, should bear and give birth to that child, is not true. For she never in all her life told me that she had any such visitor, and I know that she would be as much surprised as are many men, that such a thing as the birth of a child by a virgin could take place. So you see, the Bible account of my being begotten and all the attending circumstances are not true. My father Joseph never supposed at any time that I was not his child, and the story of the angel coming to him and telling him that he must not hide her away because of appearance is not true, because he never, in all my conversations with him, intimated that I was other than his own child. Between the time that I was 12 years of age and my public ministry, I lived at home with my parents and assisted my father in his business of carpenter, and during all this time no hint ever fell from him that I was not his child, or that I was different from other children, except that I did not do as many mischievous things as my brothers. As I commenced to receive divine love into my soul, I became very close to the Father, and this relationship resulted in my realizing eventually that I was sent by God with a mission to perform and a great and important truth to declare. And at last the voice in my soul told me that I was my Father's true son, and I believed it and commenced to teach and preach the truths of his love bestowed and the salvation of men. I knew John the Baptist well when I was a child. Growing up, he was my cousin, and we often played together and afterwards discussed the truth of my mission and the way in which it should be made known to the world. John was a great psychic and saw in his vision who I was and what my mission on earth was, and hence when the time came, he made the announcement of my coming. He realized the difference in our missions and spoke of himself not being worthy to unloosen my shoes, but yet he did not fully understand my mission and the great truth of the bestowal of immortality upon man by the Father. And now, I've got written down Silent Night, but I think it is, Oh Holy One. I'm sorry, everybody. We didn't get a chance to rehearse, so Oh Holy One, we'll hold that until we go into prayer.
Sure.
So we don't sing?
Well,
Okay.
over to you.
Over to me. So here is Jesus, who lived in a little town, a dusty little town, working for his father, thinking about God, thinking about the teachings of Jewish religion and all of these things. And then something happens, as was in this message. There is a great shift where he came to realize that he was the Messiah. And so he and John the Baptist actually got together and planned out this mission. How would this be revealed? Because this declaration would be a very dangerous thing in that time, because the Romans were not going to allow any challenge to their authority, nor was Herod going to allow any challenge to his authority as king of the Jews. So many who declared themselves as Messiah were actually put to death, because they were saying, I challenge you to those in authority. And of course, it was a pretty brutal time. You know, you didn't go to jail and do some time and get out. I mean, you're done if you make such a move. At any rate, Jesus and John the Baptist decided that they would teach the truths that were coming to Jesus as he continued to pray and receive the inspiration from God, what he was to tell the people. And mostly he stayed out of the big cities. He did so in small towns. He went from one small town to another and preached, what is called in the Bible the gospel. Now, he first declared himself in the village in which he lived. He declared himself to his parents and family and to the villagers that he grew up with. And everyone laughed at him. How could you be the Messiah? You're just Jesus. We like you, but I don't see anything special in you. His father thought he'd lost it, that he was going crazy. Because in the Jews' minds at the time, the Messiah would be this superhuman individual that would destroy the Romans and reestablish the kingdom of the Jews, and that individual would become the king of the Jews. In other words, this individual would be a warring kind of strong person that would inspire all to rise up and to suppress and get rid of the Romans and their hold on the Jewish society. And here is sweet, gentle Jesus saying, I am the Messiah. I am the one. God has told me I have a mission, and I will fulfill that mission. I have committed my life to fulfilling that mission.
Jesus continues, I first became the Christ when I was anointed by my Father, and that occurred at the time of my baptism by John. I, as Christ, am different from myself as Jesus was. Christ means that principle which the Father has conferred upon me, which made me at one with him in the possession of this great divine love. Christ is that love itself made manifest in me as a man. This Christ principle is universal and is everywhere, just as is the Holy Spirit. But I am limited in my place of occupancy, just as you are. I never, as Jesus merely, promise the great gift mentioned in the Bible, such as where 2 or 3 are gathered together, there will I be also. For it would be impossible for me to be in all places at the same time. But Christ, being without form or limitation, is omnipresent, and consequently may fulfill my promise in this regard. Christ is as much alive today as ever. He was never crucified and never died, as did Jesus.
So what was his message? We still know him today, 2,000 years later. He had an impact on the world. Many books have been written of him. Many religions have been formed around his message. And essentially, he taught about love. That was his nature. That was his understanding of who we are. We are beings that are striving to be filled with love, to express love, to be love. And his mission exemplified that. He was a great teacher of love. And his teaching says that if you go to God and open yourself to God's love, then there will be a transforming blessing into your soul that will awaken your soul and bring you to a place of greater possibility and capacity to love. It changes you. And so, like the story of Jesus, who came into the world as a pure soul, but then was transformed through his own life to become something more than what he was when he was born. He became the Messiah. He wasn't the Messiah when he was born, but he had the potential to be that individual who brought the truth of God's love into the world, and he did so. He found his way to God, and because of his nature, he always felt drawn to God, to the source, to feeling like he is in alignment with God and God's creation. He had a sense of the world different from you and I. And so with that initial understanding, he kept going to God, and God kept feeding him the truth until he became aware and his soul was transformed, and he became this transformed individual, the first in all the world, the first. Now, many have known a wonderful light in their lives, have had beautiful souls, and these expressions of soul, these individuals, have learned about purifying their soul and purifying their mind so that they are pure individuals in the natural love, in what our own human capacities are. Now, Jesus found a way to awaken something more in us, something different from that, something deeper and more powerful. And as he has said, what I do, you may do also, and do it more abundantly. He says this because the availability of this divine love, the essence of God, is for everybody. He was the first to show the way. He was the example. But he does not say that he is the Son of God in as much as he is different from any of us. He was human. But he went beyond his humanness to something more in alignment with the divine. And this is what we speak of today. And any of you that have come to our services have heard us speak of it often. That it is receiving the gift of divine love through prayer, through the longing of your soul, that you will come to know truly Jesus' message. And what happened to him can happen to you. So I hope that you will all take this message to heart, especially in this time of year, and say a prayer to God. Ask God, is this true? Is your love real? Is there something, a gift that you have for me that will uplift me and change me and bring me greater joy in life? And I dare say, if you say that prayer with all honesty and earnestness, God will touch your soul, just as God touched Jesus' soul, and Jesus spoke the truth of his experience and transformation, and how all may indeed receive it and know it. And may you do so, my friends. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we've come to the point